Okay, call to order this evening's meeting of the City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Cole. Here. Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Can we please rise for the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, any changes to this evening's agenda? Seeing none, it is approved as is. Minutes from the study session of September 9th. Any changes?
I gave one small correction to the city.
Okay. Any others? Nope. Okay, seeing none, those are approved as amended. Minutes from the study session of September 10th. Those are approved. And the minutes from the regular meeting of September 17th.
I gave small corrections.
Okay. Those are approved as amended. We have no guest appearances or scheduled public presentations, so this is an opportunity for citizens who want to express an opinion or ask questions regarding city services, council policy, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda, specifically anything that's being held in a second reading/public hearing. So generally, an immediate response should not be expected. Typically, issues are referred to the city staff for follow-up, information or research, and reported back to the council and the individual that initiated the comment or inquiry. Does anybody want to come down? It's 4 minutes. We need your name and address. Paul.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
My name is Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle, Littleton. 2 weeks ago, I was down here in this pit asking a question. The minutes from that meeting testify to that. The question I had was fairly simple. 2 weeks have gone by. I didn't expect an answer to that night, but I did expect the courtesy of an answer sometime within the intervening 2 weeks. Have had no answer. My question was really simple. Where do I go to find out how many people work for the city of Littleton on any given day? That's still my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'll follow up with Paul afterward.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Item 6A is a resolution adopting emergency medical transport fees.
I want to pull that.
Okay, it's been pulled. Okay, Peggy?
I have some questions about keeping our fees up to what they actually cost for us to do things. And we have on the communication the basic life support and the advanced life support. And in those are comparisons with Metro, South Metro, West Metro, and also Cunningham and Westminster. And I'm not understanding why we need to be comparing to Cunningham and Westminster when our close connections are with just the three, Englewood, South Metro, and West Metro. And I would like us to base our fees on the average of those three, not all 5 of them. And so, I can, move and make a motion to amend, but I thought maybe I could just ask some questions about that.
Go ahead.
So,
Mayor, so we actually did not enter the fee discussion and analysis from an averaging standpoint. If council recalls, as part of the budget discussion, we looked at it from entering the transport into the enterprise fund under Tabor, which requires that at least 90% of your revenue comes from fees. minimizing it at 10% from general fund or grants or other. So we actually weren't looking to average that out. And even when we presented it to the fire partners and to you guys as well, we still were coming at it from that perspective of looking at it from that and not an average, because we are attempting to recover a 90% of those fees or 90% of the costs through the transport fees. Using an average is not the direction under the TABOR. Now, the council, we are still recommending that we use TABOR for other reasons right now, or an enterprise fund, but that's where we were coming at it from, not from averages.
So why is that in our communication at all then?
Because we had some questions from council members about what the, and from our fire partners on what the neighbors were charging, just as information to understand, relatively speaking, where did we sit. Not that you couldn't, I'm just saying that's not where the intent that we were coming from. And one of the, you'll recall the conversation with the fire partners was they were concerned about raising that fee substantially over where we were. What we had recommended was a 15% increase, which is what you have before you, what the fire partners had suggested. And then our hope was that maybe next year we could do another 15% and really bring it into alignment with where we wanted to go. But the partners in particular were concerned with the substantial increase in the
But when we look at our shortfall and how much we would still be shortfall, it's pretty distressing to me. And I guess you and I talked today about this. The larger issue is we seem to have a pattern of fees that really aren't keeping up with covering costs. And you said we're going to change that, and I appreciate that. But it seems to me these are still a bit low. Even if it's a big jump, they're still low. And
well, we had started out the conversation with the fire partners, I believe, at a 30% increase or 33%. Councilman Stallman participated in those discussions, and they just really felt that that was too substantial an increase to absorb in a given year, and they came back with the 15%, which we felt modeled well with another increase next year for it. But again, the base assumption wasn't about averaging and comparing, because we don't know. It's kind of like, to use a law enforcement example, we don't know how those other entities are financing the totality of their transport system. So you might have a community, for example, that doesn't give a lot of parking tickets because they give a lot of warnings. Another community that has a zero tolerance policy when the meter expires. And if all you're doing is looking at the numbers, you don't understand what the culture and the policy and directive is behind that. And that's why I'm reiterating, we're taking it from a what is our true cost recovery and can we get to that point? And we don't really care to the extent that when they dial 911, we're the ones responding to them, what our neighbors are charging, because they could have a completely different funding mechanism for it. And they do, in the sense that most of our neighbors are mill levy driven through property taxes.
so I'm still having difficulty to have an annual shortfall of $700,000 and then be cutting it to $350,000. That's good to cut, but it just is more than I think it should be a much lower shortfall.
One of the I think it was the district that had made a comment during the budget meeting that one of their concerns at 100% cost recovery was there is those transports or those responses that do not result in a transport are still part of the overall cost of the system. And so by looking for 100% cost recovery by those that are transported, they are paying in essence. So if Wendy calls and she's not transported, but then I call and I'm transported, my cost of that transport at 100% cost recovery is inclusive of all the non-transports that are there. And so the community, the greater community, at least that's what the district was communicating, they thought that there should be a percentage of that should be covered so that we all are paying, in essence, through the property tax or sales tax for those people who we respond to but don't take the transport, and the burden's not solely on those that are transported. And that's kind of where that 10% was at least validated, albeit that's a constitutional number, not a social number. I don't know if that helps at all, but I don't think we were looking for 100% under that scenario. Certainly could, just not where at least the fire partners were coming from. There is a social good in having the system respond. Mayor.
Bruce.
Just to the comment that you made about the percentage of calls where a transport is not required, back in the budget discussions, that was kind of where I was going to when I said some portion of this has to be paid for out of the general fund, because I think the expectation of the community is to have basic services provided to them. It's the extraordinary costs that come up with transport that I don't have a problem with it being paid for. But to Peggy's question, we also saw today that there are varying fees charged for the types of medicines and various kinds of things that are distributed to the patient as part of that call. And I just think, to Peggy's point and to looking at that chart also, we really do need to study this maybe 6 months into next year rather than the next budget session, because we do want to make a serious dent on this shortcoming, and maybe in 6 months would be the time to look at it.
Certainly, and I think just globally, what Councilmember Cole and I spoke on was I had talked to our finance director about putting together a comprehensive list of all of our fees throughout the city, and then how often those fees really should be looked at, because some of them don't change that often because the structure isn't such that there's occurrence, and some we should be looking at, I was going to say every year, but maybe every even 6 months. And so we've got he's putting together that comprehensive list, and it'll just be the tickler file that starts to pop up, and he can contact whatever department it is and have an evaluation of those. So we are staying on top of it, because I fully agree with Councilmember Cole. We shouldn't be in a situation where we're looking at, this one's a little different because of that community benefit, but in theory, we shouldn't be having a debate of we've fallen so far behind that we're afraid to catch up in a given year. We ought to be able to keep up with the cost of the service. That's what a fee is. It needs to be commensurate with the service provided.
Just to follow up, a lot of the city fees aren't that dramatic. They don't change that much. They're the cost of giving paperwork, creating reports, and those kinds of things. But this is hundreds of thousands of dollars, so that's why I was suggesting a 6-month review rather than waiting to the next budget year.
Happy to.
Okay. Peggy, did you want to make an amendment, or do you want to make a motion?
No, that's okay. I'll go ahead. If you don't mind, I'll make the motion. I move that the resolution adopting the City of Littleton emergency medical transport service fees be approved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay, 7A, second and final reading on Title VI, Chapter 4 of the City Code. And I will read that ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending Title VI, Chapter 4 of the City Code pertaining to drug paraphernalia and the possession and consumption of marijuana. Is the chief here?
Kim's here.
Okay, come on down. Hi.
Hi.
Do you want to give just a little brief summary of it, and then we'll see if there's any questions?
Absolutely. What we're basically...
One moment. Go ahead.
Commander Kim Ferber, I work for the Littleton Police Department. The ordinance is basically an amendment, reflection of Amendment 64 and the change there. Basically adopting the changes that we are going to be reflecting that any possession of marijuana that's over an ounce is going to be illegal. It's unlawful for anybody under the age of 18 to possess, and unless there is a specific unless they have a, can't think of the word, but unless there's an exception under the amendment for them specifically to be allowed. There is no change to the penalty section, so that will stay consistent, that anything that is over 1 ounce, there'll be a $100 fine, and the surcharge will continue to be the same at $50.
Okay, council, any questions? No questions? Okay. Thank you, Kim. So I will go ahead and open the public hearing. And there is no one on the roster to speak. Is there anyone in the audience who didn't sign up that would like to speak on this? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing.
And Madam Chairman, I move that the ordinance approving the amendment to Title VI, Chapter 4 of the City Code pertaining to drug paraphernalia and the possession and consumption of marijuana be approved on second reading.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council, any discussion?
Yes.
Jerry.
A couple questions, and this is for our police department.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So on the report that we have from the city, the bottom paragraph under fiscal impact, where it talks about the final sentence, the last sentence there, however, as a result of the passage of 64, Littleton Police Department will incur additional costs associated with handling, storing, destroying of legal, and all that other stuff. So and then on the next page, it does continue to talk about live plants. What other type of additional costs will there be, other than taking care of live plants?
Well, we anticipate that anybody that's in possession of legal amounts of possession, if they are incarcerated at another facility, they're not going to be allowed to maintain those, and those facilities will not accept. So we were going to have to take those into our property and evidence. We're going to have to store and maintain them, and if they're not disposed of within the restrictions under the city, then we'll have to pay for the destruction of those plants.
So, I'm sorry, you said you would take the possession of, slow down just a little bit so I can hear you a little bit better. One more time.
If we have a person that's under arrest and they have to be transported to another facility, for example, the Arapahoe County Jail, the Arapahoe County Jail will not accept any amount of marijuana, whether it's legal or not, so we will have to take possession, even in cases where they were legally possessing, and we will have to book that into our property and evidence. If that is never redeemed by the person, if they never come to collect that, we will eventually have to pay to have that disposed of.
Okay, I heard you that time. Great.
Okay.
So my question is, what do we do now?
We'll reassess over 6 months or over a year to find out if there are additional fees and if the $50 surcharge is covering that.
So what you described is what we do now.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Okay. So it's going forward. We said additional costs, but I just don't know what those. It doesn't say to it. It just says as a result there will be additional costs.
And we'll have to assess if those costs will need to be increased through the surcharge or if the surcharge will continue to cover that. It's anticipated at this time that there could be additional charges, but we don't know that.
Great. Thank you very much. A question for our attorney, if I may.
Sure.
So then on the live plant, what is really our responsibility on the live plant thing?
That's an interesting question. Councilmember Valdez, there have been a number of different jurisdictions that I'm aware of in the metro area, some that have taken steps to basically keep plants alive, and others that said we have no capability or jurisdiction, and most of them, I believe, that's the way they operate, but I don't know the answer to that question. Now, I certainly can check into it and provide the council with a memo as to what our obligations are, but it is not something that I'm aware of that we've dealt with in the past. We may have, I'm just not aware of it, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
So if we apprehend somebody who hits somebody over the head with a poinsettia, a live poinsettia, do we have to keep that poinsettia alive?
I mean, my off the top of my head response is no.
So it's not a state requirement that we keep these plants
I
alive?
don't believe it is, but I really don't feel comfortable giving you a definitive answer without looking into it a little bit further.
Okay. If you could, just check that out.
Absolutely.
It seems to have something to do with you guys. Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, just, Kim, I remember, I think Chief Stevens last time talked about if we take plants into possession, we can't return them because that's, in effect, federal offense of dealing. So keeping them alive or not doesn't end up being the question because we can't return them.
That's correct. And I can tell you by PD policy is that we do not take in live plants, that our policy is to photograph, to take clippings so that we can do a test of those plants, but that we do not collect them.
Does that help?
Any other questions?
Yes.
You have another question, Jerry?
I do.
Okay.
I do have another question. So on the ordinance number 26, page 3, line 17, where it talks about the penalties of, in this case, $100, and it depends on a couple things. Is that $100, is that a state mandated, or is that something that can be changed?
Yeah, that is not state mandated as far as I'm aware. I think that's a city policy, and I think that's consistent with what our existing code has been.
So then, does it cost the city more to do whatever process this is talking about in number 1, E1? Does it cost the city more than $100? And I guess that'd be for the city manager probably to answer that one.
Well, I would, before I defer to the city manager as to what it actually costs, I would point out the distinction between a penalty and a surcharge. The surcharge that Kim referenced earlier, which is paragraph F, is intended to help the city recover the costs of the process. The penalty is the criminal penalty for the violation, and there's no legal requirement that it be tied to an actual cost incurred by the city.
So then going down to F where it's $50 would be the surcharge. Again, that's where my question is now. What would be a likely cost to the city to do the process here?
I'm going to assume that the $50 was calculated on the cost of what it takes us to provide anyone who is charged under having paraphernalia historically, regardless of the current code. That's what was calculated at the time. There was probably, finance looked at what was the cost, what was the amount of time it took the officer to get down there. We've got the overhead, the cost of disposal, all of that. And that's what I think Councilmember Cole asked last time, was it accurate? And we said we want to give it a shot and see if the $50 under this new scenario that we haven't experienced before, is that $50 still accurate? We think it will be at the end of the day, but it was based on similar assumptions, and it's got to be, again, commensurate with the cost of what it costs us to provide that service, if you will, of disposal of it. So it can't be an extraordinary cost. It's got to be commensurate with what it costs us to do it versus the fine, as the attorney pointed out, which is a council-driven fine or court-ordered fine. Incentive not to do it again, if you will.
So you're charged with, of course, managing the budget that we approve. So you're comfortable with $150 in this case?
Well, I'm comfortable with $50 because the $100 is a penalty issued as, again, an incentive not to show back up in front of Judge Feldman. So,
you're okay with. Okay.
So, but yes, I'm very confident that at this point that the $50 is sufficient for what our previous expense.
I appreciate it.
You bet.
That's good. Thanks.
Other questions? Can we have a couple? A couple years ago, we evaluated and we looked at that destruction of drugs fee, and I believe we raised it. It was my understanding at that time that it is, you guys hold on to these for a certain amount of time, and then you make one trip out there to the designated destruction area, and then you are charged a fee for what you're bringing in. And so it can vary each time.
Yes, ma'am.
As to how much you have, how much we're charged. So that individual, so by charging $50, it's kind of covering an overall cost over a period of time based on a quantity that we know of,
Yes,
right?
ma'am, that's correct. We also do it collaboratively with a couple other agencies. So where we may have a cost 1 year, which is significant, we may not have that same cost the following year because we'll do it with a couple other different agencies.
Okay,
And the $50 has been covering that at this point.
okay. And then I just, understanding on page 3 of the ordinance under penalties, number 1, persons who are convicted, plead guilty, or no contest to possession of less than 2 ounces. And then number 2 is more than 2 ounces. Explain to me how we bring in the 2 ounces when the law says under an ounce. That when the law says that you can't, that 1 ounce of marijuana is legal over the age of 21. So how, on the penalties, where does the 2 ounces come in?
I think that's a reflection of what was in the last ordinance, and they carried that section over. And council might be able to answer that question better than I can.
1 minute. Mayor, I think that's an error. If you look at E1, you refer to E1 and then 2. E1 talks about violations under subsection A and B, and E1 says less than 2 ounces, but if you look at A and B, it says 1 ounce. And then E2 talks about violations of C and D, also referring to 2 ounces. C simply talks about openly and publicly consuming, and D talks about cultivating unless someone has an exception under Section 14 of Article 18, which is the medical marijuana provision of the state constitution. So in both of those cases, it's the more than 1 ounce that would be illegal under Amendment 64, and that is something we should have caught before this came forward. So I would recommend that in a motion to approve, if that's the direction the council goes, that E1 and E2 be amended to change 2 ounces to more than 1 ounce.
Okay, thank you. Council, any other questions?
Now I'm confused, because I thought I had sorted those 2 out pretty clearly on first reading. And I would hate for us to be passing this, as we're doing right now, with we think we got this sorted out.
Yeah. Councilmember Cole, I understand your confusion, and I apologize since I wasn't here on first reading and the Deputy City Attorney was, and she's not here tonight, but we know that Amendment 64 sets the threshold at 1 ounce. The 2 ounces is the city existing code requirements. The purpose behind making this amendment is to bring the city code into compliance and consistent with Amendment 64. So I just don't see how the concept of 2 ounces stays in the code.
Well, A relates to people less than 21, so that's real easy to associate, it seems to me, with E1, because they're not allowed to have anything. So then the issue becomes how B fits in there. And then the C and D, and for penalty 2, E2, is, it seems to me, differentiating. So penalties for less than 2, but more than 1, even if you're entitled to have 1. And 2 is for larger amounts, I thought.
No, I believe that the policy intent was to bring it all into compliance with 64, and it should have been 1 ounce. And I'm guessing that this is just a typo in the multitude of jumping to a ban back to or this wasn't in this ordinance, but just the ongoing back and forth for it. You can have a higher fine.
If we
with
have a
higher
motion
percent.
on this, then I'm going to move to postpone the vote till we get a clarification. I think we're vetting it here, but I'd like,
I agree.
Michael, do we, or Counselor, do we have a deadline on this? Is there, okay.
Yeah, I was just going to raise it. Unlike the next item that we have, we do not have a deadline.
Okay.
And as Councilmember Cole was speaking, I was thinking rather than have us find out after you pass something one way or the other that we should have modified it, I think the smartest thing to do would be to continue it, and we will get a definitive answer for you on this question, and
Okay.
you can act on it at the next meeting.
Can I get a motion to continue?
so moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue 7A to
What date?
what date?
October 15th?
October 15th.
2013.
Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay. 7B, and this is an ordinance on second reading, extending the moratorium. I'll read that ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, extending the moratorium on marijuana clubs and prohibiting retail marijuana establishments. This is also a public hearing. So first, we will hear City Manager. Do you have any comments that you want to make on this first?
I do not, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Council, any questions? Okay, seeing no.
I have a question.
Jerry.
So on the report background paragraph, where it talks about this, on September 3, 2013, and then it goes down to the final sentence there, at that meeting, council voted to ban. Is that correct? Because as I recall, that was a kind of a messed up situation we had there, where we voted on something that wasn't really before us. So is that sentence accurate?
I believe it is, in the sense that the motion was to direct staff to revise the ordinance to effectuate the intent of a ban on retail marijuana establishments. So whether you like the wording of that sentence, but there was certainly a motion to amend the ordinance that was before you to have it become, rather than acceptance and licensing, to ban those.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bruce, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a definition of moratorium. As I am interpreting it, it is in effect until it's no longer in effect. It doesn't have, it has a time span until council elects to remove it. Is that within the definition of a moratorium?
Councilmember Beckman, there actually is no hard and fast legal definition of a moratorium. You can create a moratorium that ends on a date certain, or you can create an open-ended moratorium. The case law interpreting moratoria generally have held that the purpose is for some temporary period, to give an elected body an opportunity to kind of see how things shake out with a new issue, and then bring it back up for a more definitive set of rules at a later point. But a moratoria can be open-ended, or it can have an end date. I would advise the council, if it is open-ended, at some point it becomes unreasonable and has the effect of just being a ban if you're not going to follow up and do something with it, and that's usually when moratoria get taken to court by interested parties.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just my comment would be just to emphasize then that last part, that council, I'm understanding that the moratorium is finite, that there's going to be a period of time where we're going to consider this again, and that's acceptable to me, but I'm wondering whether it's advisable to put a date.
It's in there. It's in the ordinance.
Okay, I missed that.
It's in the ordinance as of October 1st of 2014.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. If we'll have a public hearing, and if you want to make comments at that time, you're welcome to come down. Thank you.
Yeah,
Councilman-
Councilmember, what's in front of you is a ban on, a prohibition on retail, and then a moratorium on the clubs until October 1st of 2014. There's two.
And so the interpretation of prohibition then would be it has no timeline. It
Right.
is a permanent state.
It's as permanent as the council keeps it permanent.
Okay.
Right.
Can always be
Just to
voted on.
clarify, there's two things happening in this ordinance. A ban on retail, so don't even think of the term moratoria in connection with that. That's a ban until council changes the law, if council passes it. And then a moratoria on the clubs to a date certain.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just emphasize that in both those circumstances, the council can always come back and amend those ordinances. So both of those are as solid as the council continues to believe that those are appropriate ordinances to have on the books.
Council, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, we will open the public hearing. We have a number of people that signed up to speak. I will call your name. At that time, you're welcome to come down to the center here, give us your name and address. You'll have 4 minutes, and at that 4 minutes, I will ask you to please wrap, and then you'll need to conclude. Our first one is James Van Diest.
Good evening. My name is James Van Diest. Excuse me. I'm 2430 West Main, and I'm co-owner of the Hemp Center. I would like to encourage you to reconsider your ban on retail establishments in the city of Littleton. I believe we've been in business since 2009. The prior council here, in my opinion, in a great deal of wisdom and foresight, approved 4 medical dispensaries in the city of Littleton. I was at the last meeting when the chief of police came, and Honorable Council Member Valdez asked him, was there any problem with the medical dispensaries? And he replied, no. Everything was smooth. I believe we've worked very hard to present a positive business to the public and to our patients and customers. Currently, we have 5 to 6 people a day walk into our dispensary and ask, when are we going to be able to purchase recreational retail marijuana? A lot of these people are local. Several aren't. I don't believe it'll be a big tourism thing, but a lot of people who did vote this in at the state level and at the local level expect to have this service to them locally. They don't want to have to go to Denver or any of the other suburbs that are allowing it. I mean, who does it help to ban these recreational outlets? It helps Mexican cartels. It helps Denver schools. We would like the chance to show how professionally and well we can do it, and as the city manager and the city attorney said, we can always change this later. If we did something wrong, we would stand up. It's why you have a marijuana board, like you have the alcohol board. If we were breaking laws or not following it with the intent that the voters voted for, that would be your prerogative to vote us out or to ban us at that point. But to ban us before we have a chance to show that we can do a good job, a professional job. The University of Denver and the University of Montana has data to support that traffic fatalities are down, teen use is down. Basically, it's harder to get marijuana when it's legal than when it's illegal. Right now, there's people growing it in the backyard. They're growing it in the basement. Everybody knows a brother or a cousin or somebody down the street that's growing it, and they can get it any time. And we don't have the ability to regulate it and tax it, which was the intent of the voters. So I would please ask again that you reconsider your ban and give us a chance. There are 4 very professionally operated dispensaries in the city of Littleton. And again, I think we've done it professionally. I think the police would support that we haven't created any public hazards or nuisances. I believe we've done it very well. And again, unless somebody comes in with an ID that shows they're old enough, there's not going to be any kids getting a hold of this stuff. They might get it from their brother or in the back alley or on the black market, but they won't be getting it from legal marijuana dispensaries. In closing, please again show the foresight and knowledge and wisdom that the previous council that allowed us to open the medical dispensaries and let us have a chance. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Melissa Van Diest.
Hi, I'm Melissa Van Diest, and I'm also 2430 West Main Street, and I'm the co-owner of the Hemp Center. And I would just like to also ask you to reconsider your options. I mean, I completely understand maybe putting a moratorium down while you wait things out. That's what Inglewood, that's what Lakewood, they've done. The fact that you're offering a moratorium on marijuana clubs, which your fears and apprehensions you have now are completely founded because it has other issues that brings with it, consumption on site, driving, things like that, while retail establishments bring an avenue for people to purchase, take it home, and consume it in their privacy. They're not on the street, you know, the Magic Pot Fairy's not coming, because that's their only avenues besides traveling to Denver to find it. I think that, like my father said, we haven't had any problems. You know, the federal government's actually recognized this now. They're opening bank accounts, they're lending to us, they're actually accepting us. And the fact that we've made so much progress forward and now we're taking 2 steps back just seems so unreasonable. Like I said, if you want to wait and see what happens, I completely understand, but outright banning it, I think, is just kind of bizarre for other lack of terms because we've done so well and there haven't been any issues. Having a moratorium on the clubs, I would support banning them, personally. That's all really I have to say.
Thank you. Sean Hauser.
Hi, my name is Sean Hauser, and I work for Sensible Colorado, and we're a nonprofit in Colorado dedicated to sensible and evidence-based drug policy. And I as well would like to respectfully ask you to thoughtfully consider the prohibition on marijuana establishments. I just want to kind of remind you what you're opting out of if you're opting out of regulation. You're opting out of safety and quality controls. You're opting out of putting marijuana into the hands, excuse me, of responsible operators who are going to card your kid. You're opting out of testing facilities, and you're opting out of a robust regulatory system that the state has worked really hard on and that the federal government itself has acknowledged is a responsible way to control marijuana. And in light of Amendment 64, the question is no longer, do you want marijuana in your community? Marijuana is in Colorado. It can be allowed to be grown in people's homes. There's medical stores. The question is not whether or not you want it, it's whether or not you want to control it responsibly. And to me, controlling it responsibly means putting it in the hands of responsible operators who will make sure no one comes in there that's not 21, who will make sure that it's not full of chemicals and pesticides, who take their compliance very seriously and take their licenses very seriously, who are subject to 160 pages of regulations that the state has spent the last 2 years thoughtfully considering. The great thing about Amendment 64 is it gives the local governments the authority to regulate time, place, and manner. And I think that gives you guys a great opportunity to craft this in the best way that is appropriate for your city. If that means a slow rollout and allowing only the existing businesses who you trust and know to transition, and then considering new businesses at a later time, that's at your option. If it means putting caps on the number of businesses, whatever zoning restrictions you need, that's all in your authority. And I think it's the responsibility of local officials to look at this and say, you know, we have this issue, and how are we going to control it responsibly, and whose hands do we want marijuana in? And you can control it and regulation has been proven to reduce teen use. It's been proven to reduce the black market, and I think if Littleton opts out, it's opting into the black market. It's opting into having the uncontrolled marijuana, the marijuana from other cities coming in here. It's opting into, a public safety danger in reality. And, I think the business owners in Littleton have shown to be very responsible, credible operators. Allowing just them to transition over would be allowing the same operators to sell the same product, and they are subject to an extremely robust regulatory system that includes all the priorities that the federal government listed in its memo, like keeping access away from children, preventing diversion. Those kinds of priorities are what our regulatory structure is centered around, and I think the responsible thing is to opt into that. And a lot of other jurisdictions in Colorado are opting in. They're choosing to see that there is a responsible way to control marijuana. It has, in history, been accessible to people. They've figured out a way to make it less accessible.
You need to wrap up.
And they're opting into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonny Myers.
Thank you, Your Honors. I first want to apologize for my outburst earlier. Obviously, I don't know my way around this very well, and please forgive me. And the Boy Scouts, witnessed how easy it is for an adult to make a fool out of themselves. So that being said, I want to...
I need your name and address.
Sorry.
Who are you?
Sonny Myers.
You did.
And 2861 West Davies Avenue. I think we live kind of close to you, Debbie. Excuse me, Your Honor. I want to thank you for taking this important issue of implementing Amendment 64. I'm standing here actually as a television producer for an upcoming show regarding marijuana and the effects that it's having on the state of Colorado, but that's neither here nor there. 51% of the voters in Littleton implemented Amendment 64. They did so through their vote, and you as elected officials have a responsibility to honor that vote. That's why you're honorable councilmen. And I certainly think that there can't be any other agenda for you than following the will of the people. So that's all I have to say. Do what you're supposed to do as responsible elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip Snow. Excuse me.
Thank you for your time today, council members. I do appreciate it, and I apologize for my outburst earlier as well. I'm here to just ask you to reconsider the
name and address.
Oh, sorry, Philip Snow, 1100 West Littleton Boulevard. That's different than the address I put down. This is a business address, but so you guys know.
Okay, so the address you have here, is that a home address?
Yes, it is.
Okay, what one did you just give us?
1100 West Littleton Boulevard.
Okay.
So I'm here today to kind of ask you to reconsider your decision to prohibit or ban retail marijuana establishments here within the city of Littleton. And I'm going to ask you to do that for a few different reasons. I grew up in Littleton. I spent 18 years of my life here. After I went to college, I came back here and worked for 3 years. During the time that I was growing up, I can tell you that marijuana was far easier to get than alcohol was. When you were in high school, grade school, everything like that, it was very easy, very accessible, and I think that was largely due to the black market. I think regulating marijuana is the responsible thing to do. It'll put it behind a counter. It will force the clerks of these establishments to card the people that are looking to purchase marijuana from these establishments. And basically, you're going to know where you're getting your marijuana from. It's not coming from Jimmy behind the 7-Eleven. It's coming from someone who has put the product, the product has been tested. They have made sure that there is minimal health safety risks, things like that, just to ensure that the product that is going onto the street is regulated, or excuse me, not onto the street, into the hands of consumers, is regulated and is as safe as it possibly can be. Now, one thing that is a common concern for elected officials, as you all are, is kind of the cost of enforcement. This is obviously going to be something that you have to consider when deciding to allow these establishments. One thing that's good about Amendment 64 businesses is they are subject to an operator's fee. This is an additional fee that has been carved into the Constitution that will allow local jurisdictions the ability to charge a fee that will help offset the costs of enforcement, whether that be hiring people to process applications, new sheriffs to go out, people to do inspections, things like that. So the cost of enforcement can also be offset with these operators' fees. Another common concern that I've heard from various council members is the issue that the state is not ready. The state spent a very, very considerable amount of time drafting the regulations that are going to govern retail marijuana. These were put forth on September 9th of this year. I was just down at the Marijuana Enforcement Division today, and I can assure you they are very geared up and they are very ready to take this bull by the horns and make sure that it works well going forward. I know that they've had problems in the past, but they are doing everything they can to eradicate those moving forward, and I do believe that the state is ready, not only with its regulations, but with the processes it has put into place. So with that being said, I think it would be the responsible thing for Littleton to regulate marijuana, regulate it via these retail marijuana establishments, also to gain the revenue generated from these establishments and use it for whatever needs you see fit. Again, thank you so much for your time tonight. Have a great night.
Thank you. Susan Nyes.
And it's Susan Neese. I know it's a difficult name there. My name is Susan Neese. Address is 7301 South Highland Drive. And I'm here tonight to support the passage of the ban and the moratorium because it greatly impacts the future of our city and the children of this community. And I'm a little confused by the language spoken tonight about how the law requires us as a community to go ahead and allow for retail sale of recreational marijuana, because the whole concept of the state law that was passed was to allow communities to make that decision for themselves, whether it matches with the community's desires. And that's why I'm here as a resident, 14 years of this community, and I have 2 children who have and are growing up here. The negatives of the sale of marijuana in our city limits are obvious, and I'm not going to list them, but they clearly outweigh any perceived benefits. I've heard it mentioned that the tax revenues will be in the, quote, millions, but I've only seen an annual projection of approximately, at the most, $120,000, which will be quickly negated over time by the costs for greater police work to deal with the crime and accidents associated with these retail establishments, the cost to provide mental and drug abuse counseling for abusers, and the costs of other collateral damage that will result. Nothing is free, and the cost of this business will be a human one, as well as financial and damaging to our city's reputation. I've heard it said that our new city logo looks like a burning cigarette. Can you imagine the sad association that will be made if Littleton becomes the place to buy pot and joints? The city has a responsibility for the health, welfare, and safety of its citizens. This ordinance promotes that for all, especially for those who may be a victim of a crime or accident associated with drug use, for those who may be prone to drug abuse, and for our children. How hypocritical it would be for us as a community to teach our children all these years through our schools with the police department's assistance to just say no to drugs and then to turn around and start selling pot because of the tax revenue it can provide. Just because marijuana is now legal under state law does not mean it is not still a drug, one that facts show can lead to drug abuse and other drug use. I am tired of the deniers of the slippery slope. Wasn't it just yesterday that we were asked to decide whether medical marijuana should be legalized in Colorado, and it was insisted that this was not a first step toward marijuana legalization in general. And now here we are, having to prevent the sale of recreational pot in our own city, while reading in the Denver Post about how to cook with cannabis, and how a business would have no problem with their employees smoking pot at their workplace. I've also heard the refrain that alcohol is just as bad as marijuana, if not worse. And I would reply with the simple but true adage that two wrongs do not make a right. Permitting the sale of marijuana in our city will not make the drug abuse situation better. It only adds to it. And if we are the only city in the South Metro area selling it, we become a mecca for drug users. Is that what we want to become known for in the Denver metro area? Please don't be afraid to do what's right for our community. Say nope to the sale of dope. Thank you.
Thank you. James McVanney.
Hi, James McVanney. I live in Larkspur, Colorado right now. I was born and raised in Littleton.
We need your address.
7085 Kiowa Road, Larkspur, Colorado, 80118. I'm here today to ask the Honorable Council to consider amending the ordinance in front of y'all. The way you guys are passing it, you're going to put 4 existing businesses out of business in Littleton, and you know, in our economy, that's probably not a good message to send out to business leaders in general, or business people considering to come here that, hey, you can come in now, but we're going to kick you out later after we got all your money and investment into this. It's not the right message. And I want to say, if you do ban dispensaries, I'm sorry, let me roll back and explain a little bit who I am. I'm a disability rights advocate. I got into politics by accident in Berkeley. Came out here and they were trying to ban dispensaries, and that's how I got into medical marijuana. I've done around 10 elections where municipalities like Littleton has either passed moratoria or bans on marijuana dispensaries, and I've won many of those. And just recently, Palmer Lake and Larkspur, Colorado, we did a referendum on bans, and we reversed that. Now the whole issue is going up to vote in April. And so we get up to this April issue of when the next voting is. And if this is a really big issue that if you guys choose to pass it today, you're going to put these people out of business. And, you know, a lot of people have a lot of concerns about this. So another option, if you're not going to amend the ordinance to allow them to continue, is to put the issue on the April ballot. You can put this issue on the April ballot if it says it's to permit. We've already talked about this issue in a couple places, and the Colorado Municipal League agrees with this. Otherwise, you'd have to put it on the November ballot to prohibit. It's technical. So again, I'm asking you to please make an amendment to allow specifically existing state licensed operators to convert to retail, so they aren't put out of business, and so the medical people actually will still have places in Littleton to shop. And just, I just want to hit on the medical issue really quickly too. If you do ban dispensaries, you're going to be cutting off a lot of people, specifically the elder people who are really wanting to go into these dispensaries because they've heard all these great stories of how, wow, I eat a little bar at night, I could get 6 hours of sleep. You know, 6 hours of sleep for some people is an amazing thing. And if you cut off that access to that, they're going to resort to pills. They're going to resort to all these medications that are toxic to the body. And these pills are also toxic to our younger people. And, you know, they could probably get access to them if they're still around. Well, if that's not around because the elders are substituting cannabis, which is safer, it has no toxicity level, there's going to be less harmful interactions with people, you know, using prescription drugs in a way they shouldn't. And I just want to end this with a quote from Attorney General John Suthers. He said, "More people die in Colorado every year from prescription drug overdoses than motor vehicle accidents." Let's help reverse that trend, and please amend the ordinance to include existing state licensed cannabis businesses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes those who signed on the roster. Is there anyone who would like to speak that didn't sign up? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and need a motion. Do you want to discuss first and then do a motion?
Gotta find the motion.
Can I show you all something? Just for the heck of it?
Sure.
Who are you anyway? What's your name?
Name and
Where
address.
are you from?
4 minutes.
Get those coveralls.
I'm just speaking as a council member. This is a map of the precincts in the city, and I got from the city clerk all the voting information on this. The yellow are the yes votes, 50% and higher, and the salmon are the no votes, 50% or higher. And I just thought you would find the distribution interesting. We already know we just over 50% voted for, and a little bit higher than 50%, I think, of the precincts voted for. But it is just very interesting. Whether or not that affects whatever you're thinking, I don't know. So,
thank you.
You could have a career as a college teacher.
Okay, let's have a motion, please.
I move the ordinance extending the moratorium on marijuana clubs and prohibiting retail marijuana establishments be approved on second reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council discussion?
Yes.
Jerry?
I don't want to prohibit retail sales. Right now, we're saying prohibits retail sales and a moratorium on the clubs. I would rather have a prohibit the clubs and moratorium on the retail sales. I can understand why we need more time on the retail sales so we can see how it all kind of falls out a little bit. Also, I'd rather see the moratorium be for 6 months, or if not less, than the 1 year. Again, there is because, as it says in here, that that we're going to do a little study for. Where's the words in here? In here, it says that we will, and I'm looking at the ordinance number 25, page 1, paragraph 28, line 28. Where it says that further study. Maybe the city manager can. Who's going to do the further study for us?
I'm sorry, where are you looking?
On the ordinance, page 1, line 30.
Michael, maybe I can help with that one. And Ken, I don't know if you have talked to Deputy City Attorney. I did talk to Deputy City Attorney about the moratorium on the clubs versus a ban. And she said that at this point, she was more comfortable recommending a moratorium for a year because there were a number of legal issues regarding the smoking clubs and doing a full-out ban on those. And that what in her research she's seen is that more of the cities are opting for a moratorium so that some of the legal issues can be settled out, and she felt it would be a lower risk for us than to go with a higher risk and be a test case in the courts.
So back to my question on the further study of who's going to do the studying again?
Well, that would be the state.
The state and us. I mean, it would allow us the opportunity to look and see what the implications are.
Thank you. That was unclear to me. And the city is definitely split on this issue, as Dr. Cole pointed out. And District 2, is more of a solid yes than anything. I would, again, prefer to see a moratorium on retail sales. I would like to see it go to a vote of the citizens to see whether or not the citizens of Littleton, want to have the retail sales in the city of Littleton versus just taking the state vote saying, yes, we approved it, because it is so close in the city of Littleton. Also, as I've asked many times, I've asked several times with our current chief and the former chief, whether we had any issues with the medical marijuana establishments, and the answer every time was zero issues. I've asked, do we have problems with any liquor stores? Do we have any problems with bars? And the answer is yes, and some more so than others. zero with medical marijuana establishments. And I, as many of you do know, I manage rental property. Thousands, I don't know, maybe 10,000 people live at the properties we manage. We have a lot of issues with alcohol, beer, you name it, more strong stuff, stronger than beer even. We have zero problems with folks who are doing marijuana. That's all there is to it. We have absolutely no problem with marijuana folks. Alcohol, we have lots of problems. Again, when we talked to the school folks, they said kids are stealing from their parents. I really think it's up to those parents to control their own marijuana so the kids aren't stealing it, just as they do make sure the kids aren't stealing alcohol in their homes. Again, my point here, I'd like to see us change the words, not to ban, but instead have a moratorium, and I'd also like to see us bring in the date. We can always extend it. We keep hearing that. We can always extend it. I think that'll also give us a chance to look at it again with a sense of urgency when it comes back up again, maybe in 6 months, whatever. But ideally, I would really like to see it go to a vote of the citizens.
Do you want to make any amendments?
Let's hear from everybody.
Because we can discuss your amendments.
Okay, I'll make an amendment. See, April is how many months away here? That's 4, 5, that's about 6, isn't it? Okay, so it doesn't even matter on that.
Could we discuss?
Yeah, I'd rather discuss it. I want to hear some more discussion.
He'll make his amendment, and then we have discussion
I
on his
would like
amendment.
more discussion before I make an amendment.
Does anybody else have? Bruce?
I'm thinking that the need for an election may become more prevalent as we move down with deciding how to handle this. But just as far as doing our responsibilities under Amendment 64, we are decriminalizing. That was one of the requirements. We are establishing a time, place, and manner, and that is one of the requirements. We are deciding whether to allow or not allow, and that's one of the inclusions in Amendment 64. And we're not disallowing the existing medical establishments. They will continue to exist. This is really dealing with the retail only. But I think it is very difficult because of the things that I just mentioned, the lack of clarity about that, whether it is an opportunity for the citizens to make another judgment for us and give us some advisory information as to whether, once we've handled these, we've decriminalized and we've done some other things, whether in fact they were in their mind also expecting us to approve retail. So there is an argument to be said for having an advisory election.
Peggy?
So I'd like us to have a moratorium on all of these things until October 1 next year. That gives us a chance to study and observe what's happening in some places that are implementing almost immediately. And as we move forward, we can hear from citizens about whether or not they want us to go ahead and do something. We decide whether we want to go ahead and do something, or we decide we want the citizens to vote. But I see no reason for us to jump in right this second, either to prohibit or to give the go-ahead. So I'd like, what would that be, almost 12 months that we would be delaying this.
Jim?
Well, I believe that the voters expect us to approve retail sales of marijuana in the city. It has been said many times we have no police problems of the past 3-4 years with the 4 establishments we have now. In study session, we agreed that there would be no more than 4, that their existing 4 would be allowed to change to retail. Littleton has a chance to be a leader. A ban will only cause the black market in Littleton to flourish even more so than it is now. When you talk about problems with users, it's strictly speculative, and only by allowing it will we get a record to determine what we should be doing in the future. In our meeting with the school board at breakfast a few weeks ago, they talked about having marijuana in schools, as a young man testified here earlier. And a ban is not going to remove that issue, nor is it going to keep it out. It is going to continue to be there. And lastly, I guess I should say that the amount of tax that we could receive, including a share of the state fees that are generated, that is to be shared, would go a long way toward trying to cover some of those social issues that this council has struggled with the omnibus and with the library and the museum and those things that do not generate any income for us, but is a drain on our coffers. Having a stream of income would be a benefit in the long run to this city. And I will vote against this issue. I think that it is against the whims and desires of the citizens of Littleton.
Bruce?
Yeah, when we took up the issue of the medical marijuana dispensaries 4 years ago, one of the comments, which I think is still viable at this point in time, was that it's easier to let the genie out of the bottle in the future versus try to put the genie back into the bottle once the genie's gotten out. We initially had a number of people who were pursuing sales tax licenses for medical marijuana, and we limited the number to 4. And initially, I think there was a lot of these same arguments were being posited that it's certainly a financial issue. There was financial upside to be garnered. Certainly the law of unintended consequences was in force. I think it still is. In retrospect, it appears the 4 medical marijuana dispensaries have in fact been pretty good corporate citizens. But I also think that the first speaker sort of said it pretty much, he sort of said it well, but I don't think he necessarily maybe intended it this way. Denver is in fact providing retail with all the benefits, with all the testing, with all the quality controls. It's not hard to get to Denver. It's 15 minutes up Broadway. I think people who have the opportunity or the desire to purchase retail marijuana certainly can make a value judgment whether it makes sense hypothetically to buy a quality control product in Denver versus a back alley product in a community that doesn't allow retail, whether it be Englewood, Centennial, Highlands Ranch, Greenwood Village, Lone Tree, so forth and so on. I don't agree with the speaker that said to opt out of retail is to opt into the black market. I think that's a false equivalency. I think the market's more complex than that. It isn't a legality issue so much as it is a financial issue. And clearly the ability to consume medical marijuana was at the heart, recreational adult use marijuana was at the heart of Amendment 64, but Amendment 64 clearly gives municipalities the right to make a determination of what they view as in the best interest of their community with respect to public health, safety, and welfare. Lastly, in 2009, when we looked at medical, the issue of putting it before the voters also came forward, and my feeling at that time is the same as it is now. I think we were elected to make these kinds of decisions. I think we abdicate our responsibility if we don't rule on ordinances as they come before us. We can almost say anything that comes before us should go back to a vote to the people. That's not why we're up here. We're up here to do the business on behalf of the citizens. That can change over time, and certainly, as I said, once we can revisit this in a year with more study, in 2 years, in 6 months, whatever need be, once we see how the market is evolving, and if it's appropriate at that point in time to let the genie out of the bottle, so be it. So I'm going to vote in favor of this.
Anyone else? Phil?
Just
Very quickly, the city's doing, at least the intent is to be very careful on the personal use and the personal growth, trying to do the right things on that. What we don't have before us yet is the building code components and the housing code components that will be coming later that deal with home grow issues. And the city's taking the steps to decriminalize the personal possession in conformance with the election. Peggy put up the election results by precinct, and what is interesting is the folks that voted 64 down are in the south end of town, and it's also the south end of town where if any of the grandfathered centers that we currently have ever needed to change the location, those would be the allowable locations. And to be faithful to the voters, as folks have indicated, I'm going to vote in favor.
Any other comments? Okay. Jerry, did you want to make an amendment?
Are you going to speak? You're going to speak? I'll wait
Sure.
to hear from you.
Okay. Well, I clearly am opposed to retail marijuana. You know, when we approved the medical marijuana, it was essentially because we had a number of dispensaries that had applied for licensure and sales tax license, et cetera, in our community. And when that became clear, then we put an emergency moratorium so that we could study this, we could look at this, we could slow it down. At that point, a number of them had not reached a certain threshold and went away, and so there were 6 remaining. We took it to our licensing authority. They made a determination based on those that had been in business first and did a lot of study on that. It came down to 4 in particular. So that's how that came to be. And I honestly am not certain, had they not gotten in before we had been watching closely, if we would even have medical marijuana at this point. So medical marijuana was regulated and controlled and managed by council in the city, but it came in kind of on its own. Retail marijuana, we have an opportunity to handle it a bit differently. And it has been said already that the voters did approve 64. The voters approved the what's it called, Bruce? Decriminalization of possession of an ounce or under. And it also approved the opportunity for retail shops. But it also gave municipalities the right to make those decisions based on their individual municipalities. We are surrounded by communities and counties that have said no. They're either in a moratorium that's from anywhere between a year or 6 months to a year to a year and a half, or they've just outright banned it. When we met with our educators, it was clear that they deal with alcohol and drugs in the schools more than any of us probably even realize. We met with the middle school teachers, we met with middle school principals and high school principals. And the one thing they said about retail marijuana is please don't continue to make this more accessible than it already is. Please don't continue to desensitize these kids. It was a strong outreach for me, and it was important because our school district and our school system is incredibly important. And it is really one of the magnets that draws and supports this community and brings people to this community and makes us a strong community. We are the envy of many because of the strength of our school system. So when they talk to me, when they ask me to be conscientious of what they're dealing with and how I can help them make their anything easier when they're dealing with these types of tempting situations with students, I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to support this. I definitely support I would support a full-out ban, permanent, on the clubs, given the advice of our attorney, I will support a moratorium till October 1st, 2014, but I support a full ban on retail. A ban on retail by this council does not mean a permanent anything. It simply means that this council is placing a ban on retail. If a year goes by or 2 years go by or a new council gets on, they want to reevaluate it, they can reevaluate it. They can change that law. I have no intention of being a test case for retail marijuana in the South Metro area. And I don't think we're ready for it, and I'm not going to support it. Jerry.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and amend the motion to strike prohibiting retail marijuana and insert moratorium retail marijuana. That is my motion.
With a date?
How long?
Okay, he has an amendment to strike the word ban, or excuse me, prohibiting retail marijuana and change it to a moratorium on retail marijuana. I have one, if I can, a quick question for the attorney.
Okay, I was going to make a suggestion, but
Okay, thank you.
do you want to? Okay, if the intent is to simply make the moratorium applicable to retail as well as to the clubs, the way to do that procedurally would be to, because we define retail marijuana establishments as including retail, and when you adopted the moratoria earlier, the last moratoria, it was on both establishments and clubs. So you can amend Section 1 of the ordinance so that the moratorium imposed by council under Ordinance 2013-6 is extended to 2014 with respect to marijuana clubs and marijuana establishments, and then strike Section 2 of this ordinance.
Just strike the whole section too, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
Question.
I'll second that in case, I don't know if anybody seconded his motion, if that's your motion.
That's good.
Did we have, I think we had a second.
We did not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jim is the second. Right.
Okay, we had a question for the attorney before the second, so now we have a second. Bruce.
Just clarification, then we've put the October 1st date on both of these issues now by this amendment. Is that correct? Just want to verify.
That was not changed.
Attorney?
And so October 1st now applies to both pieces of this.
2014.
2014. Ken, is that correct?
Right, and let me just provide some further clarification, because I want to make sure that if this passes, that we're consistent with Ordinance 6 that was adopted earlier this year. That imposed a moratorium on marijuana establishments, marijuana clubs, and those were defined as cultivation facilities, testing facilities, marijuana product manufacturing, or a retail marijuana store. So essentially, you would be amending Section 1 to continue the moratorium of Ordinance 2013-6 to the October date next year.
And that was the ordinance number 6 that we have in our packet.
Right, 2013-6.
So essentially, it's the same ordinance, just 2014.
Right.
Okay, does everybody understand the amendment? You ready to vote?
On the amendment.
Any discussion? Any
So
discussion?
that is your motion, is that correct? That what he said?
Yes.
What Ken said?
He said that's essentially what we're doing here. So I would, yes.
Clear.
Right. The effect of approving this amendment would be to amend the ordinance so that it would call for basically continuing the moratorium that the council previously adopted to the October 2014 date.
And there would not be a further vote on this issue, because this would be the vote.
Well, no, this would be this is a motion to amend the ordinance.
Only the
If this motion passes, then there would be another vote on the ordinance, which would now be just an ordinance to extend the existing moratorium.
Mm-hmm. Any comments? No comments? I have a quick comment on this. I don't, in my head, I don't see a big difference between the moratorium and the ban. Moratorium is the date on it, October 21st or October 1st, 2014. The ban gets whatever date the next council wants to put on it. I will vote in favor of this. It kicks the can down the road for another year, which I'm willing to do that at the risk of anything less than that. Anybody? Yep. Okay, ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor, with Councilmember Stallman and Councilmember Serdanik voting no. The motion carries.
Okay. Now we have our original motion amended.
Sorry, Mayor.
Okay. Original motion amended. And who did the original?
Bruce.
Yeah, I think I did.
Bruce. Okay.
And second, Phil.
So the original motion was, well, I guess I don't need to explain this. We all understand this, right? I've got a moratorium on retail and on marijuana clubs, et cetera, extending ordinance number 2013-6 to October 1, 2014.
The only thing that changed was yeah.
Okay, ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Taylor voting no. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. All right. Hunting. Okay, ordinance on first reading, item 10A. This is an ordinance on first reading approving the 2014 annual appropriation, also known as our budget. Council, any questions? Okay, I need a motion, please. Can I get a motion?
Hang on, got to find it.
Where are we?
I move the ordinance approving the 2014 annual appropriation be approved on first reading, and the public hearing be set for October 15, 2013 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to schedule a second reading public hearing on the budget approval. Questions? Ready to vote?
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
Okay.
I know a fix for that.
Okay, item 10B is an ordinance on first reading. You know what? I didn't read that ordinance. I'm sorry.
Read the 10B?
No, 10A.
I didn't read 10A.
I think
you did.
You did. I think you did too.
What you been smoking, man?
Or not?
I didn't.
Okay.
You verbalized what it was, but I don't think you read it.
Is that good enough?
That's good enough.
Okay. 10B.
Yay. You think Solomon would keep you out of trouble?
Is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, establishing the tax levy of 6.662 mils to defray the cost of municipal government and pay debt service of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1, 2014 and ending December 31, 2014.
You're on C.
It's 10. It's 10B. It says 10B.
10B.
Oh, good Lord.
Good job. How's that? Good job, Bruce.
Okay, redo. See, this is what happens when you leave your iPad at home.
Yeah, that's right.
An ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending provisions of the city code regarding annual sanitary service charges.
Bingo.
Okay, I need a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that the proposed ordinance amending provisions of the city code regarding annual sanitary sewer service charges be approved on first reading, and the public hearing be set for 15 October 2013 at 7 p.m. in the council chamber.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is unanimous. The motion carries.
All right.
Now,
60 seconds?
Okay, here we go. I know. Okay. Do I have to read it again? Okay. An ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, establishing the tax levy of 6.662 mils to defray the cost of municipal government and pay debt service of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1, 2014, and ending December 31, 2014. Councilor Nico, I need a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that the proposed ordinance approving the 2013 tax mill levy ordinance be approved on first reading, and that is that the tax mill levy remains the same, and the public hearing be set for 15 October at 7 p.m. in the council chamber.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay. Comments and reports. City Manager?
None this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Beckman?
Just a comment that the annual flu shot is available at any pharmacy you choose to go to. I went and got mine yesterday, and I was sick most of today with it. So there are some effects, but I really recommend you get that flu shot because there's 4 types of flu covered in it, and they say it's going to be a bad flu year.
Except for abscesses.
Yeah, except for my typhoid. Phil?
Congratulations to those winners in the photo contest. The names are available on the website for our annual calendar, and I know we will have our own service coming up later. Over the interim, the DRCOG board did approve the 2 stationary urban centers studies applications for Littleton, one for 2014 and one for 2015 for the Littleton Mineral Station and the Littleton Downtown Station as well. An item coming up later this month is Investing in Infrastructure Matters session is going to be at the Colorado Convention Hyatt at the Colorado Convention Center. It's sponsored by the Denver Chambers, CDOT, and the Metro Mayor's Caucus. I didn't know, Deb, if you were going to that coming up. So, and then also there's a session on creating livable communities that is sponsored by the state governing magazine and the AARP on October 23rd. And still, for those folks suffering from levels of displacement with the floods and that, I want to extend my thanks to the Littleton Fire and Rescue, the folks at the Littleton Englewood Wastewater Treatment Plant. Both have been providing assistance up in Estes Park, and that's where my in-laws live, so particular thanks.
Jerry?
Last Friday, I attended a fundraiser for the North Littleton Promise organization. And as you know, North Littleton Promise, they serve District 2 kids primarily right in that area. And it's a neat organization. There was almost 300 people at this event, and they went over the successes of North Littleton Promise, and the number of kids that they're serving has increased, and it's a very good event for District 2 and all the city of Littleton. One of the things that did come up, Mr. City Manager, was that the gap between, I think it's Bannock to Deter, I believe, are the stoplights getting across Littleton Boulevard so that kids can get over to the library or over to the park or over to the museum can be somewhat challenging. So maybe if you could just take a look at that, please.
Happy to.
Just go ahead and relax. That's okay, man.
But caught in a cord.
You can wait till tomorrow. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Bruce?
Yeah, three quick ones. I attended the Littleton Public Schools Board meeting on last Thursday, 26 September. Among other items on the agenda was an Educational Technology Advisory Committee annual report and charge. The city's Ken Price liaisons and serves as chair of what's called the ETAC Leadership Committee. They've got a good report in terms of what the school system is doing to encourage broader application of technology amongst the students. And kudos to Ken for being involved with that and providing some leadership in that regard. 2 high-profile activities you do not want to miss. The oh, I won't go there, will I? Often imitated, never duplicated.
Turn that thing off.
Friends Craft Fair. Friends of the Library Museum Craft Fair is at Kettering this weekend on Saturday, the 5th of October. Should start at 8 a.m., more or less when the sun, 9 a.m.? 9 a.m., there you go. 9 to roughly 2 or 3, I think. And then on Saturday, the 12th, is the Museum Harvest Festival. And also always a crowd pleaser, and word on the street is the Great Pumpkin may make an appearance. So, there you go. Thank you.
Jim?
Yes, I thought the Economic Vitality Symposium that was sponsored by the city was very exciting. I think there's some great possibilities that exist out there, and they had some very interesting projects that were demonstrated by the 5 cities who made their presentations. The scavenger hunt last Saturday, was that just last Saturday, had pretty good participation. I did look at some of the photographs. They were difficult to identify. They were much harder this year than they were last year to try to come up with the locations of where these older photographs were taken. I was glad to see that the IRS was loosening some of their tax credit rules for housing for the flood victims. That will help generate, I think, some tax credits that would allow houses to be built in a timely manner that will help with the people who were flooded out of their homes. So that was a good ruling by the IRS. I think it came down today. The South Platte Park Foundation has a new interactive website. You can access it online on your computer or your mobile device. It has maps of the trails and of the district and gives you mileages and elevations and other pieces of information. It's at www.sspf.org. The Littleton Community Retreat is coming up on October 17th and 18th. I think the deadline for registering for that may be this Friday.
It's the 18th and 19th.
18th and 19th, sorry, got the wrong date. 18th and 19th. Thank you. The Dr. Cog report, the Sustainable Communities Initiative is having a consortium meeting, which all of you are invited to. Because we are part of the consortium, on October the 10th at the Inglewood Civic Center. Registration starts at 8 o'clock and it will end at noon. So it's a half day this time instead of the full day. And we'll have it's going to be basically on shifting demographics that's happening in the metro area. And the MetroVision Issues Committee will be meeting tomorrow evening, so there'll be another report on that next meeting.
Peggy?
I just want to thank the folks that email us with their views for public hearings. They become part of the hearing and take the time to come down and speak to us during unscheduled appearances and during public hearings.
Thank you. Council, I have one item. It is that time of year again where we need to do our evaluation of the city manager. So I had sent out an email, kind of giving you a heads up. Yeah, okay, here it is. Thumbs up, he can work another year. So what I have spoken to Eric, and what I want to get is a little direction from you this evening. In talking to Eric, we felt that if council wanted to do another 360 review, that we could put that out. If it was kind of, it could be one of those things that we maybe do every other year as opposed to every year. The other option for that would be to do I guess they would call it a 180. It's a review or a survey out to Michael's direct reports. So if you would want to do that. So we need to make a decision if you want to do either one of those surveys or neither. Then the second part of that is that we're putting together a process we're looking at a couple different processes, but the bottom line is they would involve Michael doing a self-evaluation and then us doing an evaluation and then meeting with Michael in executive session, I believe October 23rd, 15th, and going over the goals, the achievements, aligning ourselves with his evaluation and our evaluation. So that's the plan. I just kind of need to get some direction from you guys as if you want to do a 360 or a director survey. Peggy?
I don't know about the 360. I think given quite a few changes been made in staffing and so forth, it would be very good to have the survey by the employees the way was done last year of their supervisor and then on up. I don't see a need for us to do the formal survey, but to give feedback.
So you'd be okay with a director's survey?
And the all the employees of their...
Oh, all employees.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was some other kind of thing. We saw survey results of the employees of their supervisors, and then also I thought of you.
No, we did. We did an overall employee survey as a component of something that I wanted as setting a benchmark. And I'm not real clear just what the difference between a 360 and a 180, because what we did last year was we asked my direct reports, you guys filled it out, and we sent it to, I think, 4 or 5 Gary Sears
peer groups.
Peer group out of there. So
yeah, and that would be, I think that's what Garrick refers to as a 360. Okay. That the 180 would be only your direct reports. It would not be council doing the survey either on that one. So it would just be the 10 directors.
Yep. And we will be updating
or
the employee
9.
survey next year as part of just every other year update piece.
Okay, Jim?
I am not in favor of doing a 360 review this year.
Okay.
I don't have an objection to having direct reports give us some comments, but the real responsibility is the 7 of us sitting up here to evaluate the city manager, and that's what I would expect us to do.
Okay. Bruce?
I'd go with the direct reports.
So you're okay with?
Yeah, as a component.
Directors?
Yeah, component of the process.
Okay. Jer?
I'm all for evaluating them, just the 7 of us.
Okay.
I make sure we have a step in the process where we have Michael's self-evaluation, the direct reports, then we spend some time talking before we invite him in.
Yeah, that would be the process. So what you're saying, and you would be in favor of a survey of directors? Okay. Bruce, are you in favor?
I would like to see a survey of the directors. I would like to see Michael's self-evaluation, and I'd like to have time for us to meet and boil and hash it all around before we meet with Michael.
Exactly. That's the plan. Okay. So we got a majority going for just the director survey, and then we are putting together kind of an evaluation form for Michael. I'll get that out to each of you to take a look at. Any changes or feedback you have on it, I think it's going to be pretty general. And then we'll get that to Michael. He'll fill it out, and then we'll work on ours. Jim?
Following up on what Councilman Beckman said, we do need that opportunity to have the discussion among us. But maybe we need to establish 2 different sessions. One that's just us talking among ourselves and deciding what's going to be reported to the city manager. And then a second meeting where it's going to be bringing the city manager in. There's no sense of us meeting for 3 hours with the city manager sitting out in the hallway and then coming in and talking to him for an hour.
I don't mind making them wait, personally.
But you're a sadistic person, though.
That's just me, though.
Excellent.
So then on timing...
I would request that because that would carry it over post-election, and it's this council that's evaluating me because it was actually October 3rd. I would happily wait. Not that I'm opposed to pushing it, but the election would be the next meeting, and so it would be the middle of November.
Did we cancel the 22nd study session?
Yes, we've got a study session.
Oh,
So
I'm
we
trying to
could
keep
do-
these on regular meetings, but yeah, if you want to.
Well, we could,
The 15th and 22nd.
okay. So if we do our meeting, we'll do an exec session with council. There's also going to be additional exec on that too, on the 15th. And then council will have opportunity at that exec to discuss just amongst ourselves. And then on the 22nd, we'll do the formal evaluation in an exec.
We'll post it as a special meeting.
Correct.
With an exec. Got
I
it.
am,
Okay.
I am out of town on the 22nd of October.
Oh, geez. Okay. What about the 29th? Can we move the study session from the 22nd to the 29th? It's a fifth Tuesday. Jim?
You keep going on to fifth Tuesday. You can proceed without me.
No, it's a review of Michael.
Well, I'll give him a good, the
Yeah,
review I
then-
give him, I'll give him.
What about next Tuesday, start the process?
We have the information.
Well, we've got to get it put together. Eric's going to be out of town the rest of the week, so.
Yeah, I don't know if we could, even his staff, I don't.
Yeah, they're going to have to.
Looking at a one-day turnaround, really.
Jim, are you okay with that?
I could.
Okay.
With 29th, you said?
So we'll move the special session of the 22nd to the 29th. We won't have a meeting on the 22nd.
Did we have anyone scheduled in
Yeah,
on the 22nd?
can you hold on one sec, please?
I thought there was something going on the 20th, South Suburban.
That's our meeting with South Suburban. So are we looking to move that?
So
Let's keep that one on the 22nd. Let's not
Yeah,
keep
we've got
compounding this.
We've got South Suburban coming. We've got Laura for urban drainage coming. We have South Suburban Foundation.
Okay, so then we'll go ahead, keep our study session on the 22nd. We'll have a special session on the 29th, which will take us into an exec session solely for the purpose of your review.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I hope somebody took good notes on that. All right. Okay, council, if there's no other business, we are adjourned.
Yay. Almost. Yeah, under 9.
Wednesday morning, a session is being held with the former Secretary of Education, Bill Bennett, on transformative education in Colorado. That's being held